I'm Dave Hansen. Welcome to the March 31st, 2022 meeting of the Business Operations Committee of the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission. This meeting is being recorded and will be available after its conclusion via link on the Commission's website. As a reminder, please make sure your microphone is on prior to speaking. Before we will begin, I will like to ask if there are any opening comments from commissioners. Seeing none, Chase, could you please take a roll call of the commissioners?
Commissioner Smith is present. Commissioner Woodson. Chairman Hansen
Present.
is present. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Chase. Today's agenda will include two separate items. We will hear from the Executive Director's operational update from Tess Stovall, and afterward, Melanie Harrell will provide an update on the fiscal year 2022 budget actuals, as well as a revised budget for fiscal year 2023. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on the agenda before we vote to approve? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion's approved. The minutes of the meeting held on January 20th, 2022 have been provided. Does anyone have any edits to make regarding the prior minutes before we proceed?
Motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. The first item on our agenda is an operations update from our Executive Director, Tess Stovall. I'd like to recognize Tess for this presentation.
Thank you very much, Tess Stovall. I'm here to provide my operational update to you all. First, from a staffing perspective, we have had no hires since the last quarterly meeting. We are continuing to look for a reporting and compliance specialist, as well as we are looking to hire an authorizing coordinator to support our authorizing team. I think we, in particular, are seeing the large number of applications and potential appeals coming our way, and then what that would then mean for our team as around pre-opening and just general support. With those two positions to be filled, that does leave one final position out of the 15 allotment yet to be filled, so that we can really deploy that position based on what we need from a staffing perspective. You'll hear more about what the ASD's staffing plans are tomorrow. But one of the things that Dr. Carney and I have talked about is us being able to use one of the positions that they have to support some of our federal grant reimbursement work, and that we then pay a part of that person's salary. So it would be an employee at the ASD, but they would support some of our capacity work. This is something that we saw benefit when I was at the State Board of Education, and I think when Melanie and I are talking about things that are really important but also take a lot of time, federal grant reimbursements is one of those, and having one person really specialize in that work is something that we are in conversations with. So Dr. Carney has agreed that Melanie would be in the hiring process of that employee, so it's very clear from the very beginning that that person would be supporting our work as well. From a procurement standpoint, we've had a couple of procurement activities, both renewal of grants or contracts that we have for next school year, particularly around Elevation. So Elevation is the platform that we use for individualized learning plans for English learners. So every English learner has to have an individualized learning plan across the state, and this is the data system that houses those plans. So we've been working on renewal of that contract. We also are working through Power School, which is our student information system, and renewing that contract. We also have an individual that we have a fee-for-service contract with to support our student information system, in addition to Lawrence and really helping Lawrence in the student information system. But that is kind of the activity we're seeing around procurement. And the last update I have is around office space, which I think at some point I will not have to update you all on office space, but we are still moving forward on the 8th floor. The good news is, I think the most important update for you all to know, is that I have worked with the team at General Services to, based on the current configuration on the 8th floor, to add 2 additional seats in our current configuration. And what that means is that we had currently allotted for 15 slots, so that would be the 15 people that we would hire, but they've been able to change the configuration to increase our seat count to 17. So what that means is that if in the future we grow and have additional capacity, we would already have those seats within the current square footage, and we wouldn't have to increase our rent. Secondly, we have gone ahead and made sure that the swing space, so the additional space on that floor that they are holding for the commission and for future growth. They're making some intentional decisions in their construction such that when we do potentially need to access that space, it will reduce the cost on the agency. So we would just be required to pay for the furniture as opposed to actual construction costs of removing walls, et cetera. So I'm really excited about the possibilities on the 8th floor, and that General Services is working with us and they understand that both our short-term and long-term needs. We are still looking at a move-in of February-ish of next year. So I've told the team, make ourselves at home because we're not moving from the fifth floor for a while, but we are excited to be up there at some point in time. And that concludes my operational updates, and I will pause for any questions.
Thank you, Tess, for the update. Do commissioners have any questions for Executive Director Stovall? Thank you very much, Tess. Let's make sure the minutes reflect February-ish as a hard and fast timeline for being in our new space. The next item on our agenda today will be coming from our Director of Finance and Operations, Melanie Harrell. Melanie, can you please provide us with an update for the fiscal year 2022 budget to actuals?
Yes, thank you so much, Chair Hansen. We have updated the current FY22 budget to actuals to reflect our current spending and drawdown. On terms of our revenue, we've had some slight adjustments to our BEP pass-through and authorizer fee projections based on the latest ADM true-up that happened in February. So before our last meeting, local districts had reported higher than budgeted local revenues, which significantly increased these allocations for Davidson County schools, slightly increased them for Shelby County schools, and then we've seen some additional movement there just based on changes to our ADM. So again, and I know I say this every time, but while all of our revenue is available at the beginning of the year, we like to update the committee on how these funds are drawn down and expended over time. So we are currently, in terms of a change to our revenue projections, not anticipating expending all of our ESSER administrative expenses initially budgeted. So we've decreased that forecast accordingly. But any funds that we don't end up using for admin costs with ESSER, we will be reallocating back out to our schools next year. So the other thing I want to highlight is that if you look at the kind of pass-through dollars and revenue, you'll see that there are some areas where our expenses are greater than our revenues. That's because we just have we have to pay out expenses before they are reimbursed to us by the state. So our grant pass-through currently exceeds the revenue that's been provided to us, but those reimbursements are all pending. They're with TDOE for processing. And as Tess also gets to always talk about the 8th floor move, I did want to highlight that because of the delay in our new office space, we did have to work with General Services to add a couple of conference rooms and enclaves to our current configuration on the 5th floor. So something that I know I mentioned last committee meeting was that we were waiting to hear back on what those costs would be, what the increase would be to our rent for the current floor. We have received that, and it's well within the budget that we already had for this year. So we're not anticipating any costs over budget there. And so with that, I'm happy to take any questions on our FY22 budget to actuals.
Are there any questions for Melanie before she provides us FY23? Let's just make sure that next year we get our variance down. Start with 91 as the base and get less than $91.
I was pretty happy with that.
Pretty amazing.
That's
Thank you.
pretty close.
If you want to go ahead on to the fiscal 23, please.
Thank you so much. So again, given our discussion at the previous committee meetings, I wanted to give an update on what we're currently thinking in terms of our FY23 budget. Given our latest enrollment projections, and we're getting a little bit closer to where we feel comfortable with knowing how those are going to shake out. So we will be bringing the official amended budget in July after we see what happens at the General Assembly and how everything shakes out. But this is a preliminary estimate of what that might look like. So something that I do want to flag is that we are currently anticipating a total enrollment of about 3,900 students across 9 schools compared to just under 1,700 now. So we do know that we are anticipating our BEP pass-through and our authorizer fee revenue to increase given the increase in our enrollment. I know Chase, Tess, and I just had our budget hearings over the past couple of months in the General Assembly, and I do want to highlight for the committee there's very much a a clear indication in those conversations that we are prioritizing the use of our authorizer fee dollars and that we are moving to a place where we can be sustainable on the authorizer fee alone. So that's something that as we are thinking about prioritizing funding streams for next year, how we are allocating our funds, and how we are monitoring these things, we are looking at our authorizer fee next year being projected to cover about 60% of our current estimated costs, and that's something that we will continue to keep an eye on and be reporting out to the General Assembly regularly. The other thing I wanted to highlight is we do have a projected surplus, of about $700,000. I know something that this committee has talked a lot about in the past is we know there's uncertainty around revenue, how local revenue shakes out, what ADM will actually be, what enrollment may look like, and how we are accounting for the uncertainty there. So when we were doing this budget, I think there are two important assumptions to know. The first is that we use the current BEP rate, even though we have heard rumblings that we anticipate these BEP rates will go up based on increase in local sales tax revenue. We do keep that flat to make sure that these estimates are conservative and that we're not kind of counting on any advances in local revenue that may not come to fruition. The other thing is that when we were budgeting, we looked at kind of our projected surplus and saw what it would be, and it's about 25% of what our revenue is expected to be once you take out our pass-through dollars. So we feel comfortable that this provides a pretty substantial cushion against the uncertainty that's inherent there, and feel good about where this ended up. Again, we know that certainly on paper this may look like a lot, and it is, but we do have to be a little bit more cautious just given the uncertainty in our revenue streams. So the last thing that I want to mention is that currently we have nothing here for our ESSER pass-through. We'll be working with our schools throughout the close process to get estimates for how much carryover they're anticipating for their ESSER dollars, and we'll update that for our July meeting. I do also want to flag that our consolidated funding pass-through dollars here are an estimate. We have not yet received final or initial allocations from the state for the consolidated funding application. That's because there was a delay in the federal appropriations this year for that. So we should be getting those in a couple of weeks, and that is another estimate that we will be updating and have finalized for July. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions from the committee.
Questions for Melanie on fiscal year 2023 budget? Chase, let's make sure that official budget is also in.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Melanie. Unless there are further questions or comments from the commissioners?
Mr. Chair, this thing's on. The only thing I have, and I mentioned this to Melanie before, one of the things that's still just a concern, mostly because serving in the nonprofit world, I'm seeing a lot of nonprofits utilizing either their ARPA funds, their PPP funds, whatever they use to quote unquote pad their books right now, which will make their financials look stronger. So as we get ready, I know we've got a ton of LOIs coming out. There will be a lot of probably appeals from just as everything moves through. I really think we need to make sure that we're asking specifically what were any one-time funding through any of those COVID relief packages that were passed that needs to be separated from what their actual books are so that we can ascertain what a charter's actual financial health is regardless of what they may have received, because that money has to be spent one way or the other. It all has to be completely spent, or if it isn't spent and an audit comes back, they have to repay it to the federal government after December the 31st of 2024. So that's just a big star thing that I just want to make sure that, especially as some of our charters are listening to these committee hearings, that's something that we really need to make sure that we're looking at going forward, because I don't want somebody sneaking through and then we find out 2 years later that there's a financial problem that we didn't know about.
Thank you all for your attendance and participation at the meeting of the Business Operations Committee of the Tennessee Public Charter School Commission. At this time, there are no final comments. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Yes. Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Thank you. The next meeting of the Business Operations Committee is scheduled for July 28th, 2022. The full commission meeting will be tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. in Nashville. We stand adjourned.
We get the